Hello, everyone. It happens very rarely, but people can survive even serious accidents, sometimes with severe physical and mental consequences, and sometimes with an incredible will to live. A girl named Juliana Kopka was able to walk away after falling out of an airplane at an altitude of 3,200 meters. But what did she do after she woke up, and what trials did she face? We're going to find out right now. Juliana Kopka was born on October 10, 1954, to a family of German immigrants. The girl grew and developed like any ordinary child. Kindergarten, school, friends, first dates. True, she spent most of her time with her mother, who worked as a biologist. Her father was often away on trips for work. When Juliana was 17 years old, her mother invited her daughter to go on a vacation to the city of Pucallpa, where the head of their family was at that time. There were 86 passengers and 6 crew members on board. On that day, there was a slight delay in departure due to bad weather in the Andes region. But after a few hours of waiting, permission was given to take off. Unfortunately, then 47-year-old Maria and her 17-year-old daughter Juliana had no idea what was about to happen. Horrible circumstances. Flight number 508 took off from Lima at about 12 o'clock noon, and after reaching a height of 6,400 meters, headed through the mountains. Juliana would later go on to say that the first half hour of the flight went absolutely normal and showed no signs of danger. But once the plane crossed the Andes, there were thunderclouds ahead, which was quite a common occurrence in the region. Of course, it would have been wiser to fly around the storm front, but the pilots apparently wanted to reach their destination as quickly as possible so they could get back to their families, or perhaps they simply relied too heavily on their experience, underestimating the force of the elements. So they decided to fly straight through. As Juliana recalls, the clouds suddenly became very thick and dark, and there was severe turbulence. Then, the unthinkable happened. Lightning struck one of the engines, causing it to explode. The right wing of the plane began to burn. This led to a breach in the airliner's hull. Of course, the crew made every possible attempt to keep control of the aircraft, but in the strong turbulence, the plane overloaded its stress parameters, leading to damage to the left wing. The plane literally began to fall apart in the air, and having lost control, went into a tailspin. The airplane's fate was sealed. Flight 508 plummeted to the earth. An amazing rescue. According to the schedule, the arrival time in Pucallpa was scheduled for 12:47, but several hours had passed, and there had been no messages from the crew. A search and rescue operation was launched immediately, but the situation was complicated by the fact that the debris which had fallen didn't break the trees, but simply disappeared into the forest thicket. So it was very difficult to spot them from the air. A small fire was quickly extinguished by heavy rain. Adding to the complication was the fact that it was unclear where exactly the airliner had disappeared. Many assumed that the plane had in fact crashed in the central Andes while navigating the mountains. A few days later, the search for the missing plane was ended. There was no doubt that no one could have survived such an accident, but sometimes people are very wrong. It just so happened that during the fall, Juliana, along with the chair she was fastened to, was ejected from the cabin at an altitude of 3,200 meters. As the girl later recalled, the last thing I remembered was a flash, a burning wing, and the unnaturally calm voice of my mother saying, "This is it. This is the end. It's all over." Then there was a sharp jerk, a free fall with the chair, and a crushing blow. It's very scary to even imagine what emotions the victim must have been experiencing. Details of the story. As it turned out, Juliana had fallen into the Amazon rainforest and lay unconscious until the next morning. She woke up with a terrible headache and severe nausea. The girl's entire body was covered in cuts, and she simply didn't have the strength to unfasten her seatbelt. The only thing that was clear to Juliana in that moment was that she was alive. As it turned out, the seat from the airplane to which she was strapped didn't plummet down like a rock, but had some air resistance, thereby softening the blow. Thus, fate had given the girl a second birthday. But, as it turned out, this was just the beginning of her difficult path to being rescued. Juliana looked around. There was no one. She was missing a shoe. She had lost her glasses, and she was only wearing a light dress. Her whole body ached. She had no idea where to go. The only thing she knew for sure was that it was no use waiting for help. She was going to have to rescue herself. But it took another 4 days before Juliana Kopka had recovered enough from the fall and was able to start moving. Oddly enough, not far from where she had landed, the girl found a small bag of candy, which she took with her on her journey. "It was my only food. I don't know where the bag came from, but I took it with me," Juliana recalled. For the next 3 days, the young woman simply walked forward, hoping that she would eventually come across a settlement or road. Real problems. The first problem was that Juliana was nearsighted, so moving about was very difficult without her glasses. She had to move very slowly and carefully, probing the area in front of her with the stick. She couldn't have walked faster anyway because, as it turned out, the ligaments in her knee had been torn. The second problem was lack of food, but she was saved by the bag of candy and the berries that were growing around. She had neither the strength nor resources to catch fish or animals. But on the other hand, water was no problem because it rained for several hours each day, so there was plenty to drink. Clothing was another problem, as it was cold, wet, and her dress offered no protection from accidental cuts. She had to spend her nights without a fire. The situation only got worse every day as the young woman's pain and suffering increased. Juliana was literally surrounded by danger with every step. 10 days passed, but the girl couldn't find any people. She had all but lost hope, and she had no strength left. But the brave schoolgirl continued to walk on. Hope for rescue. Fortunately, on the 11th day of her journey, Juliana heard the sound of a stream. Upon reaching it, she followed its course downstream. She remembered that her father had taught her that streams flow into larger waters, in this case, a river, and there may be settlements on its bank. It became much easier to walk, but the likelihood of encountering venomous snakes was very high. She often came across caimans, but knew they weren't a serious threat to humans like piranhas living in flowing freshwater. She lost track of how many days had passed since the crash, but in the end, Juliana Kopka found a boat, and next to it, a motor covered with branches and a can of gasoline. From fatigue, the exhausted girl simply collapsed next to the boat. She was soon found by local fishermen from Puerto Inca. They immediately brought Juliana to the village and administered first aid as best they could and fed her. Then she was transported to the local airport before being transferred to Pucallpa, where she was admitted to the mission hospital. Resolution. Her injuries, abscesses, and lacerations weren't too serious, so Juliana Kopka wasn't retained in a medical facility for very long. The doctors informed her father Hans of the miraculous rescue of his daughter, and he immediately came to pick her up. Thanks to the young woman's testimony, the rescuers soon launched a large-scale search operation involving many aircraft, but unfortunately, no one was found. At first, the girl was haunted by nightmares of that ill-fated day. Juliana didn't understand why she, out of so many people, was the only survivor. But despite everything she had experienced, the girl wasn't afraid to fly, and she never gave up on her dream of becoming a zoologist and exploring the jungle. Then, as always, the journalists and screenwriters flew in. A film about the events was made, and then the second. Each of them deserves to be seen. Sometime later, when Juliana Kopka was 57 years old, she published a memoir with the romantic title, How I Fell from the Sky. For the last 10 years, she has been living closer to her children and grandchildren and working part-time in the library. She enjoys spending time with her readers and telling them the story of her miraculous rescue. Conclusions. What else can be said? That Juliana Kopka was able to survive such a terrible crash is truly a miracle. But the fact that she was able to find the strength to carry on, despite her injuries, is a testament to her pure fortitude. After all that I have experienced, I have looked at my life in a completely new way. We must cherish every second of every day, because none of us knows when and where our life will end. So, just be happy now and never give up, even if it seems like it's all over," said Juliana. She's right. No matter how hard it is, you can always find the willpower to move on. As a person overcomes their own trials, they begin to understand the real meaning of life. And that's all, friends. If you liked the video, then subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like it. Thanks for watching.